So I'm calling this session the Fragility of Hope. I sort of want to run, I do want to run the theme of hope. And for a better time, for a few sessions. And soon I will combine it with pride. And I think this is my, in the first person, my development of the material and David's material into some sort of different direction. So we're looking at, I guess, big hunks of the human experience, like hope, like pride, in a way that I don't think is often addressed in the therapeutic world, or sort of slightly sort of downplayed. Yeah, I can't quite get the articulation yet of what it means that I want to approach these issues in ways where they are illustrative of the tools. Because I started the material on hope with a statement that hope dies last. And that is a statement that comes out of, many areas of life. But in particular, it comes out of the civil rights movement. And I think it has continued through. Sort of you, Cynthia, to skyons, is that the right word? To champions of Chicago. A name slipped my mind for a minute. Studs Terkel. Yeah, two champions of Chicago, Studs Terkel and Barack Obama. And I think the concept that hope dies last follows through into Black Lives Matter and where we are now in different ways. So I guess it is, and I think it's relevant to kids. It's relevant to kids who grow up in rough, deprived, abusive circumstances. Kids who grow up with lack of opportunity. It's kids who grow up with, well, if you take it into Michigan, poisoned water, Flint, Michigan. And one of the reasons I want to talk about the fragility of hope, because hope dies last, but when we're fragile, we don't believe that. We don't sit back and think, oh, hope will stay around for a bunch of time, because hope dies last. We go into despair, and that's where in our work in the sessions of the last couple of sessions, the I guess in a sense, the heavyweight tools, true rest, contribution from hurt and purpose, can give us the feeling, because when hope dies last, in an unconscious level. True rest, contribution from hurt and purpose are there. Okay. But when things are in that unconscious level and we don't have a cognition around them, where we don't have, a bit of theory around them so we can sort of study them and look at them consciously, it's a bit happenstance. It's a bit up to lady luck whether we'll hold on to it or not. Because in a moment I want to go into why hope is fragile. And that's very, very much in the basic Pellin Tools, the basic work of David Pellin. If I can just quickly acknowledge and run that through. The truth line, so we've only got a little bit of it. So we're only saying we've only got a little bit about hope. We've only got a little bit about hope, how hope relates to politics, and the work up ahead on pride. Because just to sort of say in advance where some of that work comes from. Pride in a lot of intellectual spheres, a lot of therapeutic spheres, almost can have a bad press. And what I've done is change that with our material on pride, because our material on pride, at times, it is pride and almost nothing else that get people through tough times. But often that is them getting through on their own. So there's almost no place for the helping professions and the helpers like me or other people who are doing the helping. It's like all my admiration and recognition for Alcoholics Anonymous, but I know just out of work experience, some people do it cold turkey. The programs, whether it's Pellin or whether it's AA, nothing's for everyone. And some people do it through cold turkey and not through a helper. And there's something about the power of that part of human nature where someone simply survives. A child who, at some point everything is unconscious. A child doesn't know that a dysfunctional family who through its own internal strength, and I'm talking about a toddler, I'm talking about little ones, who through some sort of internal strength, some sort of luck, some sort of nourishing person that was somewhere around. Many people, it's not my little bit of the truth, but I'm not saying I've got it all. But many people will say it's God. I mean, hope for many people comes from, you don't walk alone because God is walking with you. That's not my particular bit, but it's many people. But the small child who comes through strong is drawing on some sort of hope that we can hardly get our head around. And of course, some do, some don't. Like war, it makes some people, it breaks some people. And some people die in war, some people survive. And that's luck. Someone standing here and they get shot, and someone's standing here and they don't get shot. So the place of chance in our work is always there. In early days of the long 3 or 4 year part-time Pellin training courses, when I had a bibliography, I always had Joseph Conrad's. Hold on, I just turn my phone off. I always had Joseph Conrad's novel Chance as part of the reading list, because I wanted to bring in chance into human nature, into the therapeutic process. And I want to bring this together today, and this is the first. Well, I just want to make an announcement, I guess, that Vic has pointed out that we're coming up to the 50th anniversary of the day of David Pellin's death. You've got the date, Mary, right? Roughly.
Off the top of my head, I think it was the 17th of May.
Right. Anyway, 17th of May is the 50th anniversary of David's death. The 15th of June, that's this year. The 15th of June next year is the 50th anniversary of the opening of Pellin. When Vic, through Mary, sort of reminded me of that date, to be absolutely frank, I was just shocked. I didn't believe it. I thought, no, it was a year earlier than that, because I couldn't get my head around it. From that May to the next June, I'd done all the things I'd done. I just couldn't get my head around it. That'll be for another time. I'll reminisce. I'll let myself reminisce about that. But I want to celebrate this, and I want to celebrate it with, starting on that date in May is the start of what I want to call the year of David. And I guess outside we'll call it the year of David Pellin. And then the following 15th of June will be the start of year of Pellin. So we got 2 years of celebration, okay? And I think that relate, and there's something about that will be also, well, it'll be spring, for one. And the seasons are quite because I grew up in somewhere where the seasons aren't so dramatic at all. Something I get from living here and when I lived in Vancouver is the drama of the seasons. Okay, and I find them quite dramatic and quite exciting in that way. And I guess a source of true rest, a source of hope. I think if we bring in the theme of pride, I guess it's the pride David had and the pride I've got, about, what we've done with this over these years. And having, Victor there is just a huge plus for me. But I want to make those 2 years of Pellin a time when I'm reaching out a lot, but at the same time, grounding it. And even today, grounding the fact that, knock on wood, you know, we are coming out of this worldwide nightmare. And I guess in 3 weeks, we'll know a bit more about if or not we're coming out of it. 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 12 weeks. I don't know quite why I'm doing it in 3 weekly segments, but, you know, it'll be that different. I mean, even now, today, with Johnson & Johnson one-shot vaccine coming out. And I think the work, me, this is something I know I have to do, me understanding that, you know, all the vaccines are really, really, really good about stopping you dying. You know, they may not all be as good as stopping you getting it, but you're not going to die from it. Even the Johnson & Johnson one, and, you know, one shot, and it doesn't need to be, you know, frozen in that particular way. You know, hopefully in a healthy way, the great nations will compete like crazy about who can produce most of this thing. And people will start feeling some hope. But the fragility of that hope, and what I want to present here, the fragility of hope is all the stuff we have in our work, and we've been looking at specifically here recently, resistance to nourishing change, negative memory links, destructive pendulum swings, attraction to hurt, callousing. You know, there are 5 things. I'll say them again. Resistance to nourishing change, negative memory links, destructive pendulum swings, attraction to hurt, and callousing. They're the sort of forces, that's the dark side, okay? You know, and they're the forces that come in, you know, from our point of view. And again, you know, when I get fired up like this, I know I get high. And I present, and I must present as if, you know, this is the answer. But we're not saying we have the whole answer about hope or pride. We're saying we've got our bit. But I need to put that.
Peter, can you repeat those 5 again? I got resistance,
Yeah,
negative
sure.
memory links, attraction to hurt, destructive pendulum swings, and there was one more.
Callousing.
Callousing. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I was writing them down. And
No, not at all.
all right.
I mean, I'm throwing out a lot of stuff today. But, you know, some of it's, you know, I guess sort of reaching for the presentation and the methodology. You know, these are not rules for life. These are, well, you know, even though things are looking better, I just can't feel hope. I won't believe it. I won't let myself believe it. And then, you know, is there true rest there? Is there contribution from hurt? Am I getting purpose? So they sort of come in. They come in and go out. You know, they're not ever present like rules of life. They're not like, you know, someone who has a strong religious belief, reads the Bible or the Quran every day. And yes, so it's a different, the tools are there to remember, to reflect on. Could that give me, you know, if I thought about true rest, could that give me a slightly better understanding of, you know, what I'm feeling so lousy, or why I want recognize the contributions I've made that slipped out. Recognize the contributions. Yeah, okay, I'll stay with that. Recognize the contributions I've made. So the methodology is very important. It's almost as if, at best, the true need will emerge, okay? But we can't always count on it because of resistance to nourishing change, by the way. Because in resistance to nourishing change, we have the stubbornness and the saboteur that will take away our own accomplishments. And as I mentioned in the last session, we won't pursue true rest, in particular, pursue true rest. So, hope dies last when things are most extreme, okay? And this is where, when we get to that other material, my exploration of the theme of pride, you know, because you'd almost say from Freud to Shakespeare to Freud, Socrates, Shakespeare to Freud, you know, pride got a bad press, and I'm doing something different with it because I don't think that the intellectual and, well, as we call it in our work, the official academic professional strand, I don't quite think there's a sufficient place to recognize that some people come through with magnificence, having been not had opportunities or nourishment, and who are quite unlikely, and it's almost seen as a bit of a poster boy thing. This person came through. You get that in fostering all the time. Everyone's got a poster boy, poster girl, you know, the story of someone comes through with, you know, flying colors, straight A's, gets into Harvard, whatever. What about all the others who sort of just struggle, but still do pretty well? And yeah, I'm getting a bit too digressed there into pride. I don't want to do that. I want to stay with hope. And, you know, hope is the feeling, you know, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 5 years down the line, I can see that things might happen that I can believe will mean I have a good life. Now, if I go back to it, yeah, some of this material is really quite new. I don't have the logic yet. Hope dies last. This statement sort of applies to extreme situations when we need something, anything to survive, and then hope dies last. So some hope will come in. That's the hope dies last question. And you get it in histories, the sort of belief of people inside oppressive political regimes, you know, people inside slavery, people inside the Soviet communism, people inside Nazism, people inside Jim Crow. It's very hard for most people not to believe it's going to go on for a very long time. You know, people did not think the Berlin Wall was going to feel for, Germans. Well, the Third Reich was there for 1,000 years, and so was Soviet communism, and so was Jim Crow. There will not be segregation today. There will not be segregation tomorrow, and there will not be integration today. There will not be integration tomorrow. There will not be integration ever. Segregation is permanent. I mean, that was, I think I'm right. That was clearly the majority of position of the southern states in 1952. 1952 is not so, and certainly people who grew up in slavery to believe it would ever end. And because it didn't, people were born into slavery, died in slavery, wanted something different from their kids, who they were separated from. But they could never believe it's going to end. And that's where hope dies last. People in those impossible situations did not let go of hope. Okay. But sort of historically, they're a minority. Okay. They're not the majority, they're a minority. There's a very famous, I don't know if I said this here or not, but there's a very famous photograph. I think it's something like 1938, 39. And there's a group of, it's a photograph of a group of factory workers. They're all men. It was 38 or 39. They're all German. And they're all giving the Nazi salute. Except one guy who is sort of up in the top row in the right-hand side, has his arms folded. He is not giving the Nazi salute. And to me, it's a bit awesome that he was the person who was on the right side of history. There's like 100 people then who were all, giving up. So the power of hope can be seen in those sort of extreme situations. I think we can bring it down to a more, need to be careful of time, a need to be, more mundane level, a child who's had some failure at school, or a teenager who's, or a child at school who's had some failure with schoolwork or some difficulty with friends. Parents and a nourishing family, once that child will feel hope, things are going to get better. It's not always going to be this way. This too will pass. Time will heal a broken heart. So the tools, and I just want to say one thing to try and wrap up this particular presentation and get your input or questions. If we take those situations and bring in true rest, contribution from earth or purpose, even just one of them, it makes a difference. It makes a difference. It's visible. I mean, the child who can get comfort from another child. I've been through that. I was really terrible at spelling, and I always used to cry in spelling tests, and that's me. And I still have trouble with pronunciation and spelling. And if you could imagine, and me saying to another child, look, you know, I have a hard time with spelling. You know, I understand what it's like when you're sort of humiliated in front of the other kids. I don't have the language at the moment of a child, but a child would say that in their language. Or I guess the child who can just go home and sit and watch a soap opera and with mum and cuddle up with mum on the couch, and that's true rest. I mean, you can see how these things come in. But just to, I guess, locate it, the fragility of hope, just located on one thing, and perhaps a more specific. So I want to introduce a lot of general stuff here because, well, as you can see, it's looking ahead 2 years. If we just looked at how our memory links can inevitably make hope fragile, or when hope becomes fragile, it's gonna be about negative memory links we carry. And we will go into that within which we, well, putting it into you know, work earlier in the week, that's when resistance to nourishing change comes in. And resistance to nourishing change and negative memory links, you know, they can be really fierce. They can be, yeah, I will sabotage you. You think you've got some hope? I'm going to come along and I'm going to chip away at that, and I'll succeed. So,
Peter?
yeah.
So, as someone whose majority of my life was affected by extreme pendulum swings, I'm very aware, listening to you, how, you know, how easily despair came in the, well, how lack of hope anyway came in the downswings, like instantly dead. And, you know, I was a classic, I'm never going to be low again and I'm never going to feel better again swinger. So the hope was ever coming out of the depression. I mean, over the years, I taught myself that you've come out of every other depression, so you're going to come out of this one, right? But I'm very conscious listening to you that of the three things about hope, you know, when you're closer to the middle of the pendulum and tend to live more in the tolerable area, I don't know how good about true rest I am, but I know that purpose and contribution from hurt are big for me. And I'm thinking about last week when I can't even remember what I was doing. Oh yes, I did the recording for the show that was yesterday, and I was really, really tired. And I went low, and I was able to say, well, that's just because I put so much out for the recording. And I was feeling low about not having sold any of John's books, despite so far, you know, having this marketing campaign. And I drew on purpose. You know, I said, okay, I'm going to talk to the marketing person. I worked out, I was able to draw on purpose to work out what I thought might be going wrong with the marketing campaign, because film fans do buy film books and people interested in mental health don't necessarily, and she was slanting the thing that way. and Mental Health Way, and I just worked out everything I wanted to say to her that was quite critical of what had happened so far, and Devon, her name is, and we came up with a marketing campaign around the new page about being able to watch the films. And anyway, sorry, I don't mean to go rambling on, and I'm very tired because my dog wasn't well and I was up a lot in the night. I didn't have much sleep. But I'm just very aware of that contrast, you know, that I didn't even lose hope. I just strategized. I just thought, you know, what action can I take? How can I draw in support? I wrote to the other marketing people I work with that connected with the ones that published the book, having a brainstorming meeting with them. I mean, it's just such a huge contrast from, you know, 8 months of not believing hope or happiness was ever going to come back to turning it around in 24 hours, having these new strategies and plans. So I just wanted to emphasize that importance of the 3 factors that help with hope.
Peter, I think you're still muted. I'm hearing your mouth moving and not hearing anything.
Thank you. They're almost assuredly very energetic, okay? Each of them. They have, just to put in the sophistication of the tools, they each have within them a very possible destructive side. The destructive side around...
the 3 things of hope, Peter, is that what you mean?
The destructive side around true rest is escapism or addiction. The destructive side around purpose is fanaticism and cults. Around contribution from hurt, I feel is less than the others, but there's a certain narrowness, or almost an obsessiveness that, you know, everyone's life should evolve around this, whatever it is. So I guess, in this sort of strata, the negative side of each of the 3, true rest, contribution from hurt, and purpose, is a narrowing down into something that's hurtful and something which has within it attraction to hurt and callousing. And of course, in a sense, almost a technical sense of the Pellin Tools, I think it's the callousing that's the one that really makes hope fragile. You know, it's a cynicism, bitterness. Yeah, I'm with Victor today. Maybe you could tell him, Mary. Thank you. David used to sort of do something. He'd just write 0 plus 0 equals 0. And then he said, that's the most dangerous thought in the world. Okay, one of his sort of, I guess, extreme. And what he was saying, I guess, you know, was to believe in nothing, or to be, you know, just bitter and cynical is extraordinarily dangerous. Cease
warned us that she had to leave for a meeting. I think she's gone for that reason.
Oh, okay. Cynthia, do you want to come?
Oh, sorry.
I can wait for Tamara to go. I do want to say something, but Tamara wanted to come
Yeah,
in.
Tamara?
I find something really something that I'm working on that feels very important, and it's kind of subtle, but it feels really, really essential. And I said last time, there's a feeling about hope sometimes that is almost like I need to push myself forward in a way that may leave me behind, and that there's something about falling back into faith, um, and abandoning hope for for a time that um, feels less about ego, um, and being more in the unknown and learning. But I really, I really appreciate the idea of luck a lot, um, because it relieves anybody of the need to make sense of what feels like is bad luck. And if it piles on, this sense that, the thoughts and the sense that we could make is that we've done something to deserve this, that it's easier just to believe that there's luck, and to look for the role that you play. Yes, but in the book of Job, I love that story so very much. I mean, it's very Jewish. There's like mazel, which just means star, that we're born under star. So you have to add tov, mazel tov, which means good, maybe a good star. But the idea that there's just in this life, you don't know. I mean, it may be that there'll be a really bad thing and then 5 more bad things that happen after that. And so be it. So when Job finally asks, like, why me? I love the answer. I think it's a great way to start life, which is because I'm God. In other words, like, don't ask. You know what I mean? And and I it's a relief just from somebody who has a very super punitive super ego like that. um it just helps to deal with what's come up. And something I do notice from, like being very white and college educated, and with almost all of the advantages that anyone could see on the outside, that the difference between me and my immigrant grandparents were that they could find plenty of reasons why it was going to be hard when you woke up that day, because there was a lot of outside. There could be racism, or just, just a lot of hard work that just was. And the fact that you were a brain surgeon when you were in Russia, and now you're cleaning toilets, is not what did I do wrong? That wasn't the question. So there was just less there was less self incrimination. So I have a feeling that the hope was just in the fact of waking up in the morning and working, and guessing that why not, something better will happen today. But I think in like the second, third, in the third generation, fourth generation, I've noticed with the clients that I have, and with myself, that there's like this work ethic, that has an ethos to it, which is if you're struggling, it's because you're failing as an individual, not that there's a system that's failing. And if your body is failing, that's a real problem. So those are all of my thoughts today in a jumble.
You're speaking muted again, Peter.
Mine are in a jumble today too, so we're doing that. I like jumble. Yeah, I think a whole lot of, yeah, because just to share with you, this is just straight sharing. Big pause. Yeah, I'm writing a book on decisions. That's what it's called. And the fact of jumble, what you were calling jumble, what I'm calling different times, just the mystery, the oddness. Jumble's a good word. You know, there can't be a whole bunch of formulas about making decisions. It doesn't work. You know, there's a whole lot of mystery and jumble. You know, someone sort of out of nowhere makes a big decision, and or makes a small decision that ends up being really big. Yeah, I think I don't think it was at the forum. I think it was elsewhere. But I went into a rather too longish sort of teasing story about this couple who met in Boston and went to school there, and you know, went to university there, and they both did very well, and they come from a different part of the country where they weren't so well accepted. And she wanted to become a concert singer. She was at the conservatory, Boston Conservatory. He was at Boston University, and really, a lot of people thought he was going to be a really good academic. And Martin Luther King and Coretta King decided to go to Montgomery, Alabama, and not stay in Boston. That was a sort of temporary move they were going to make, okay? And, you know, nation-changing decision. But, you know, it's a decision made in, you know, yeah, there are a lot of factors, and, you know, I can read the history and I know the history, but there's also a lot of jumble there, you know, and that couple could have decided to stay in the north, not go back down south. And I don't think there's any doubt he would have been perhaps even a great academic, but he wouldn't have been.
Are you looking at decisions that come from chance, and then looking at what happens as a result? I mean, there could be parallel universes where that decision is made or isn't made, and then what the ripple effect is or isn't after that. Yeah.
And that's why I like that photograph of these. I think someone's counted them. They're saying it's 100 men, all giving the nasty salute, and one man with his arms crossed.
I know that photograph. I always wondered what happened to him.
I know a little bit about that. I'll tell you, okay? Someone found out his name. I don't know if they know more. But yeah, there is the jumble, and there is the chaos, and I can absolutely understand how, you know, I want to say this with respect, and also some envy, that, you know, people who have a clear and deep belief in God, I think they can get their head around some of this a little bit easier than someone like me can. Cynthia.
Yes, I think that one of the things, kicking off a little bit on what Tamara said, my volume might be going down because I'm thinking, so let me.
No, you seem okay.
Oh, good. And there's, the monotheistic, if you have a monotheistic faith, there's the monotheistic paradox. If God is good, God can't be almighty. And if God is almighty, God can't be good. And then there's the sort of thing that, there's just stuff that we don't understand. And that's, part of my own faith is that there's stuff we're not going to understand from the unenlightened state, which we're in right now. We'll understand when we're enlightened, but we can't understand it before that. And that lets go a lot of that. But in terms of chance and free will, I mean, as an astrologer, that's probably the biggest question every budding astrologer has to come to terms with. How much is fate and how much is free will? And in the Western branch, Indians, it has a lot clearer. I've been learning Indian astrology, and there's a lot clearer philosophy, which makes sense than there is here in the West. But you have all the way from the super hardline traditionalist astrologers who seem to have somehow picked up predeterminism, even though that wasn't really part of the tradition until later, but to where like everything is due to the stars and to chance, and that you really have no free will. And some will say, well, your chart will show you how much free will you have, which I actually understand where that's coming from, because some charts push you more than, and other charts have more. Other people's charts have more. So there is some truth to that. And then there's the other side, the like new age that went into the evolutionary astrologers who think everything is free will. And even the things that seem to be chance are because you did something wrong in a previous life. And I actually think that I have to say, I almost think that the everything free will is almost crueler than everything. I mean, I think both extremes are cruel, but I think the everything being free will is even crueler. So that like, if it's blaming the victim if something bad happens. You saying a child born into abusive family, that's their fault, into poverty, into slavery. I just can't go there. I mean, yes, there might be karmic issues, but I think that's too simple of an answer. um and I think that actually, this is my fight with the traditionalists. Actually, in the tradition, if you look in the Hellenistic works and Hellenistic philosophy, the idea is it's actually close to what's in the Indian to the day. Some things are fate and some things are free will. There's things that you can't control and there's things that you can. And the job in that thing of the astrologer is to sort of help the person separate out, what can you do? This is your circumstances, this is your choices, and work within the choices that you have. Um and I think that's really, I mean, it's part of sorry, I'm going to go into my pet peeve, which just because I want to, I mean, there'd be no point to astrology or to any advice if everything was fate. Well, then you just might as well just go along and accept whatever it is. If everything's free will, what's the point of having an advisor? You can decide everything. I mean, not just astrology, any advisor. I mean, things don't make any sense unless there are things you can control and things that you can't. Well, the serenity prayer and and I think that's where hope is that you know you hold on to what you can. And I think for me, sorry, just one more thing, hope is from seasons. And I mean, I see this movement of the stars, see the movement of seasons. Spring's always going to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, I mean, those issues touch me very practically. They touch me very practically. I've said this here before. When I first met Fritz Perls and was just totally enthused about him as a clinician, is the best I'd ever seen. But the theory stuff, the philosophy stuff, and particularly towards the end of his life, he was very new age, he'd done a lot of LSD, he was, very Big Sur, California, Esalen. and then British Columbia, where I met him. And it was, go with the flow. And if you just, do the work, the self-discoveries will come for you. And I'm working with guys in prison and their families, and we just sort of, well, I know I've said it here in a different context. It was just sort of wrong, and then particularly was a horrible case. Was in Michigan, so I think it was in Michigan. I think it was right. Spoke to me. 14-year-old girl who stabbed her grandmother to death a couple of days ago. And there's sort of documentation that was premeditated. The right person intervening could have stopped that, okay? I don't know a lot about it, but her mother had custody of her. And I don't know, it just sort of crossed my, and I've read a lot about war, both novels and history, historical novels and history. And it is the case that, someone, moves away from a tank because they want to have a pee, and the tank gets blown up, and they survive. I mean, they are war stories that are routine. And I guess I just struggle with those things. I just struggle with them. And if the right sort of person could have moved in, or the right social worker went in there and said, we've got to get this kid out of there. We've really got to get this kid out of there fast. Because anyone with any experience would know that. Those things are not a surprise. I'm saying this rhetorically, okay? But, in my view, those things, people don't even have to be very good. But if they've got any experience, those things are never a surprise. Hey, we've got to get this kid out of there. Let's stop everything and do that. Wouldn't have happened, okay? So I struggle with that stuff, okay? I struggle with that stuff. So, the issues you're raising, Cynthia, is sort of crucial for me. Yeah.
Can I say something about what Tamara said? I was very struck by the end of what you were saying, Tamara, about your grandparents expecting life as immigrant to be hard. Because I was thinking about a video I saw when I was doing anti-racist training, that I may have mentioned here before because it made such an impact on me, of a very kind of pure white anger. I don't know why I use the color white, but anyway, very kind of pure anger from a Black woman about racism. It was like a kind of flame, I suppose. It was so focused, and right at the end she said, white people are lucky that we don't want revenge, we want equality. And I was thinking about, how do people retain any hope in the situations you mentioned, slavery and Jim Crow situation. I've forgotten the other ones off the top of my head, and Nazism. And I wonder if some of it's what Tamara said. It's like, in more privileged situations, we don't, if you're black, you think in terms of systemic racism, consciously or unconsciously, because you know that you're in danger, especially if you're a black male, but not only, you know you're in danger just going down the street. Or if a policeman stops you, you know you're in danger, and you don't know that as a white person. So sorry, I'm a bit groping for this, but so it's easy in an individualistic culture like the West or America or the UK or something to experience as a white person that it's your fault. And it's kind of less easy if you're aware of the hard circumstances, whether that's those immigrant circumstances that Tamara mentioned, which of course applies to, you know, Iranian doctors who come in recent years and have to be taxi drivers. So that's just such an interesting thought, that the expectation that that something systemic in the situation you're in is going to mean you expect things to be hard, and that somehow nourishes hope. That's kind of,
That's right.
Interesting thought.
Yeah, but like it's not cynical.
Right.
You haven't, it's not an inside job yet. When you get to a certain level of success, of comfortability, then you're told that uh capitalism works, and if you're not working, then it's something on you. But it's not a problem with the system. And so I'm well aware of how much self-hate there is compared when I worked at Walden House with people who were on the street, mostly black, incarcerated. There wasn't anywhere near the same amount. There wasn't as much depression as there was when I was working with students at UC Santa Cruz, or when I was studying in Mills College with, an all-women's college. I mean, a black woman who worked for CBS from Oakland, African American. She, after being there for half a year, she just made an, I remember we all assembled, and she looked absolutely sincerely shocked and said, I have never prescribed as much antidepressant as I have here. The eating disorder, being so sky high, the suicidality. I've worked in Oakland my whole life, and this is a catastrophe that I never imagined. I would never have pictured if I didn't work in counseling and psychological services, at Mills College of all places, which, is highly reputable, and the average, it's upper class, upper middle class. There's lots of money, lots of intelligence, and think lots of resources for any students there. And it's just like I know that my experiences there were educated. I lived in a hall where they had to change the old plumbing, because so many students were throwing up, and the acidity just ruined the pipes, because the eating disorder was so rampant. If it doesn't work for all of us, it's not working for any of us.
Yeah, that's, I reckon that we want to incorporate that as one of our slogans. Okay. Because in terms of my bit around, and with our modesty and in the face of some of these issues, and what your saying tomorrow about those people, who don't have the privilege. And if you take particularly slavery, American slavery, where did all the nourishment come from? Where did all the role models come from? Where did the energy come from? People like, Dr. King, William Douglas, James Baldwin, they didn't come out of nowhere, but we know they came out of slavery. And I think, I think I can make a case. And when you think of it, there's, I can't remember her name, but a young woman who, sort of publicly says, very hard for me to say this, okay, so, just goes on television and, her skin's relatively light. And she said, I represent rape. That's what I represent. My body represents rape. I mean, as I said, it's even, I almost feel I don't have to write to use that as an example. But, they came through. And, I think we can say some of it was the purpose, the church, the dream. Some of it was true rest, the music, and the church. And some of it was contribution from her on a daily basis. On a daily basis, contribution from her. And we can never know all the stories coming out of that. But 250 years, okay? In a short period of time.
I want to say something about what tomorrow
Yeah.
said. One of the things when I was a lawyer, I had worked, because I did for a while before I had my own practice, I worked for a firm that represented really, really wealthy people. And I mean, millionaires. And I also represented, especially when I was on my own or when they had to do pro bono, I've represented people who were very, 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 very poor. And one of the interesting things that I found, well, one, there was no different, you couldn't tell how happy somebody was. Millionaires were just as miserable as people who were dirt poor, and there were people who were dirt poor who were very happy and pleasant, and who had suffered depression. But they also, one of the strangest things is that, because as a lawyer, you worked with people's money. I mean, because you had to divide people's money. And so you had to figure out what they had. In terms of the feeling, not how much money objectively they have, but the feeling of whether they were broke or not. Rich people were far more likely to think that they were broke than poor people. And the people in terms of who is going to pay, who is going to pay you, which was important as a lawyer, even if you were going to survive. It was actually, you were much more likely to get paid by the poor people than the rich people. And in fact, the two people who the men, really wealthy men, particularly if they didn't like something you did, wouldn't pay you. Sometimes you had women who were married to wealthy men who never had to pay a bill and never handled money, didn't pay you. But the people who would, when I put on payment plans, I had a couple that I had like $25 a month. And I will tell you, I had some really, really poor, and I knew they were poor because I knew their finances. They were the most faithful. And I know that $25 a month cost them a lot, but I had at least 3 or 4 of them who faithfully paid me thousands of dollars till their bill was paid, $25 a month, and never missed one payment. And I had wealthy people who stiff me, almost immediately. So I think there's something about the expectations and that kind of thing. And I can't say that I understand it, but it's something that I observed.
Yeah.
You're muted, Peter, again.
We've got a little bit of that in terms of the tools, in terms of material life force and callousing. I'm just bringing that in to, I guess, claim the relevance of the tools to a lot of different situations.
Meaning that the richer people were callous to, is that what you mean, that they were the calloused ones, the people that wouldn't pay, had the money?
Well, yeah, they were it's a callous around the material life force, okay? The callous around the material life force is this young lawyer. I don't have to care about her. I don't have to attorney Cynthia, not on my radar, okay? And the poorer people, out of necessity and survival, needed to have some of their caring life force coming forward. So Cynthia was attorney Cynthia was a person to them.
Oh, interesting. Thank you. I'm glad I asked the question.
Yeah.
They were far more likely to be grateful to me than than wealthier people.
Yeah, attorney Cynthia was a person to the poor people. She was not a person to the wealthy person.
Or she was a loser person. In my experience, if I don't reflect in some way, if I don't satisfy their narcissism as a reflection satisfactorily, then what they see in me is someone who's poor and a failure, and their aggression, I mean their punishment of that, to be sure not, it would be easy for them to write a huge check if it were for somebody who had the same level of financial success and material success themselves. The imbalance is with people who have too much more than me, and it's obvious. That becomes a very interesting thing of who I get stiffed by, and the question of how come, and the callousing that you're talking about. But I think also just what we see, I mean, that the Senate, that they won't pass a $15 minimum wage. I mean, where is that coming from? It's punishing people who are working at McDonald's. What is that? And that people who vote for them somehow don't want to be associated with needing the very least of what they have coming to them with wages. It's a, I mean, if you can explain that through Pellin, please do, because I am very confused.
Well, that's what, it's one of those, it's something Nikki and Mary and I often say to each other. Wow, David really had some sort of mind. And I guess that's what we get at the year of David. I feel we do have some answers in that, okay? We have some answers in that in terms of the, because I'm a huge fan of McDonald's. I've done a lot of reading in McDonald's, and I sat there for a long time, and I sit there and watch people. And now I've got time. Now I've got memory links about taking my grandkids to McDonald's. So I've got all these positive memory links about McDonald's. But if you hang around McDonald's long enough, you can. And I've often thought I'd, write them a letter and, try and put together a grant proposal or something. They provide, and if you sit there long enough, they provide a whole important social service. Okay, they really do. I don't know if it's the same in America. It's a bit different in Canada, but here, someone who's, really down and out. Not everyone, okay, but I've seen, some homeless person or, old lady who's obviously got, mental health problems, etc., just going into McDonald's every day. And being able to just stay there and have the cleaner say, "Oh, how are you today?" Let alone poor families being able to take all their kids out to dinner. Okay. So anyway, that's a bias of mine. I'm a fan of McDonald's. I know all the criticism. But I think almost because it's so poorly paid, there's a lot of caring life force there. The boys and girls who work there got to get on with each other, and they got to make it enjoyable. Yeah. Do you want to come in at all, Nikki?
Yeah, you're just reminding me of observations I've had from what feels like a long time ago now, of course, like nearly a year ago. And in normal life, I will spend a couple of hours not in McDonald's, I can't bear the smell. Burgers, Nero's or something like that anyway, and Starbucks and so on. And I've noticed the same thing there, the service they provide, and then you said about people, they have to get on with each other. Yeah, I circulate around different ones, and after a while you recognise the staff, and you know who's with who, and you know who are the nicer people, and I don't know what I'm saying. It's just giving me nostalgic memories, I suppose, of a different sort of life that I'm missing out on now. Just those microcosms, is that the word, of interaction with people that you get by going to places like that, and that you see other people get. I don't know if I'm saying anything that's got any relevance to the point, but those were my thoughts.
Muted again. Peter, you're muted again.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because that confirms the thing for me, because I know I want to develop something around, how do people survive slavery? And then, of course, you've got the other one, which is on the left of politics, more particularly in England, more controversial these days, but the extraordinary, I'm not Jewish, the extraordinary success and of creating a state and maintaining a language after 1,000+ years. And that, if I'm right, next year Jerusalem. And they had no hope in hell of getting to Jerusalem next year, but you know, in the 15th century, 14th century, 16th century, next year Jerusalem. And they did, they got there. And you can take that one apart and look, purpose, contribution from hurt, true rest. It's almost right there. But sort of how do people, I think one of the things we can say, and it does relate to hope, because in all those situations, it's not just, I don't want to be sort of romantic about this, but I think it is something about the way the women carry the caring life force forward through generations of hope within hopelessness, hope within times when there was simply no rationale to be hopeful. And I'm sure a historian could come in, a guest of mine, and look at peoples who have not made it because they got hope taken away from them somehow, or they lost it. That's a bit historical speculation on my part. The slavery thing I know about, and the history of the Jews I know about.
I've wondered if it's not the end of hope to realize something that was always supposed to be next year for thousands and thousands of years, and that the cynicism and the place we all shared, which was the mythic idea of that we would all someday meet in Jerusalem, but for that to be politicized and actualized in the material world, and that we're not the diaspora, and the identity crisis that goes along with that, it's just been enormous. You know, the divisions now with Israelis, and then, you know, people like me who you know, what was important is that you're always running. But with the whole thing of, you know, we ran, they didn't kill us, let's eat, you know, that's my thing, but not that we're defending anything. Because, you know, you're never supposed to arrive. You're just visiting, and then you're going to have to keep going because they're going to come after you again. So I don't know, but it's a strange time, I think, to have something concrete, you know, that you can fuck up.
Muted again, Peter.
Question.
Thanks for that. I think that's a challenge, and I think one of the challenges within Pellin is to, because the thing I say about Pellin over and over again is practical or it's nothing. And I think the practicality is that we can say that true rest, contribution from hurt and purpose are possible sources of hope and are possible sources of understanding how unlikely hope occurred. And so it's not what I call, you know, poster boy or girl. It's not the extraordinary one. The extraordinary one is standing on the broad shoulders of others. And I think there's also something which I'd like to get at next week in staying on hope, is just a recognition. Because I saw an interview with Kamala Harris, and she said, and it was with Al Sharpton, and he said, well, all the other major black politicians have come through, have gone to Ivy League universities. You went to Howard. And she said, yes, And what I got at Howard, which is a black university, was constant recognition that you're a good person, you belong here, you're going to do well. And if you read, you know, Michelle Obama didn't get that out of Princeton, that's for sure. But Kamala Harris got it out, you know, you belong here, you belong here. That's what she got out of Howard University. And I just found that, yeah, sort of extraordinary, rather than, you know, going to Ivy League and going to Harvard or Princeton or Yale, or even University of Michigan, which I know very well, and feeling, oh, why are you here? You know, difference, yeah. So there's something about recognition and hope that I'd like to do next Sunday. Okay, we'll finish there. Thank you for coming. And I'm in, wow, forgot where I was so much into this. Yeah, I am in England, I am in Norfolk. And it is 7:35. That's me. Tamara?
I'm Tamara in San Francisco, 11:36 a.m. and contemplating coming out of the closet, which in San Francisco, when you say something like that, it doesn't usually mean what I mean.
Yeah, that has a whole different meaning.
Yeah. Yeah, Nikki?
Nikki in Wimbledon, it's 7:30. It's very dark. You don't have to be in the closet to be in the dark. Yeah.
Okay. Mary?
I'm Mary, about to come out of the car at 11:35. In Rosarita Beach, sorry.
Okay, Cynthia?
Cynthia in Kankakee, and it is about 1:36 here, and still gray.
Okay, well, once again, thank you for coming, and watch this space, okay?
Right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.